Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Better Opinion. I am your host, Kevin. I am once again joined by my co-host, Manser, who is wearing a very unique shirt. Manser, your shirt is today.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, it's a nice shirt.
But nice isn't the word I would use, but it is something.
I really like this shirt.
I didn't say I don't like it, only that it really is today.
Really.
It was a choice. I mean, what can I say? I wear like the same 3 sweaters every recording. So, that's probably more gamer than just some sweaters.
Listen, this man just threw his father off into a volcano. I think it's a pretty good shirt.
That's the face I would make if I threw my father into a volcano.
He's very happy about it. He's very proud.
Is that happy? Is that a happy face?
He gives a thumbs up right afterwards.
That's wild. We're talking about difficulty today.
Yeah.
And I guess the lack of difficulty he had throwing his father into a volcano.
I mean, this is Tekken, but I think Tekken's a very good. The idea of difficulty, fighting games in general, kind of have a wide move set, which causes them to be hard to approach.
Okay, so difficulty was a topic you suggested, which I believe was triggered off of the discussion on my stream. Yes.
Yes, I remember you'd mentioned that a lot of people thought Clair Obscur was a very difficult game, but the problem with Clair Obscur is that there's only one thing that the player really has to do in order to beat anything in the game, and that's to learn how to parry.
Yeah, if you get really good at parrying, like they later introduced like parry 2, they call it gradient attacks, but it's just parry 2. But like the reality is that if you watch people play the game, people who first time most bosses are just really good at parrying, and people who like struggle are really bad at it. And that's really it. Those are like the two. People would say I'm wrong, but like that's because they didn't actually consume enough like examples. You watch enough of it and you realize, oh, this is like the defining factor.
Well, because parrying kind of circumvents the difficulty in a turn-based action game. You have to be efficient with your moves, but when you have parrying, every move is your move. Because here's the thing:
even their move is potentially your move.
You don't have to worry as much about the action economy, because if they make an action and you parry it, it's your action.
Well, and in Clair Obscur, it's a snowball, right?
Yeah.
Every time you parry, you get more AP on that character's turn.
Yeah.
So you're limited by your action points, but you get more action points for parrying.
Yeah, so
and you can get stuff that makes that even better.
Yeah. So it's a weird dichotomy where if you learn this one mechanic, you've kind of you won the game.
Yeah. No, it's true. In fact, one of the things I mentioned is that, the game has both parrying and dodging. Dodging is easier. The window for dodging is bigger, but you don't make a counterattack. I found that by just ignoring dodging and only focusing on practicing parrying, eventually I just got good at parrying. If you're trying to do both, then you're going to be worse at each. But if you just focus on parry, well, you'll always be ready to parry. And if you parry, you're going to deal damage. And it's usually more damage than your average attack. So parry forever. And every time someone talked to me about that game, they'd be like, oh, I did all these builds. And I was like, builds? I just hit the parry button and I kind of just whenever I got a new Picto, I was like, oh, I should add that to the character.
Yeah, going through the game, I'd realized there was this stat specifically for turn order, but then I thought to myself, it's always my turn. I should just do more damage.
It's always my turn.
Because here's the thing. If I parry something, my character doesn't attack.
That's true.
So I should just make it so that my character does more damage when they do an attack, because they're attacking all the time if I just do it correctly.
Yeah. If you are a god at parrying, you're right. Every turn is your turn. And that is an interesting... Now, people aren't going to like that because a lot of people really like Clair Obscur.
It's like... I'm not
and they're
saying
not going to be willing to recognize. Well, this is an issue. People don't want to recognize a clear, like, a real, an obvious with evidence mechanical statement if it rubs up against like something they like.
But the problem is parrying in that game makes it so it's not a turn-based game. It's a rhythm game.
It is a rhythm game. It really is kind of well, it's like Sekiro. I talked about this the other night with some people. Sekiro, I didn't really like it at first. And what made me like it was when I stopped playing it correctly and I started learning speedrunning strats from a friend who was a speedrunner. I never speedran it. I just liked learning the strats because once you were speedrunning, you weren't doing the same thing over and over. When you play normally, you're basically just doing the same thing over and over, but the gimmick is slightly different. It's a big bull that's going at you. It's a giant dragon shooting stuff at you. But you are, relatively speaking, doing the same thing over and over, which is hitting the parry button precisely, right? And the thing is that like when you stop doing that and you were focused on like, oh, how does this boss get cheesed? Well, each boss is cheesed differently. So now you actually had to take the time to learn something new rather than repeating the same thing you've learned throughout the game.
Yeah, when a game kind of takes on a mechanic with such importance, it makes the rest of the game seem much more bland because all you need to do is this one mechanic and you win. Why would I bother thinking about anything else? Why, like in Clair Obscur, why make another build if all I need to do is parry and it'll always be my turn no matter what?
It'll always be my turn.
Yeah, whatever build you do, that's always going to be true.
Well, and parrying ignores, you don't take any damage, you deal damage. You want to know when healing matters? Only when you take damage. If you always don't take damage, then you never need to heal. You never need items, you never need skills.
Well, here's the thing. If it's always your turn, on your turn, are there any like strength up potions?
There are skills and stuff for that.
Then you can just do that on your turn. Yeah. And then when you parry, you'll
deal more damage. Yeah, just deal more damage. Yeah, no, that's actually true. And it's interesting because this subject came up while I was playing Sea of Stars, which has a time click the button to deal more damage on an attack and time click the button to take less damage on a hit.
Yeah.
Both of these things are less consequential. Not timing it perfectly, you will still deal damage, and not timing it perfectly, you will probably still survive the damage. It is better to do it more often than not. Half the damage from a 50 damage move is way better than all the damage. But like universally, it is not as consequential, right? Being perfect at this is not as important to winning the game. You still actually have to like I was really good at it, and that you think you were there for it. I was doing the fight with the Necromancer, and I had to do that fight twice because I didn't quite understand which of her interruptible abilities were the most important to interrupt. And I realized, oh, the big damage move is actually the least important because I'll just heal that. What matters is the summoning. The summons are what was killing me. If I never let her summon, I'm good.
And that's what from what I see makes an RPG really good is when you see a boss and you work around their mechanics, the way that they initiate their turns. I'll give an example. Child of Light game I've been getting back into. It has an interesting mechanic when you have a timeline. So you have short, long, and very long attacks. And what happens is you often want to time your attacks so when the enemy is on the timeline gets to this red spot, you hit them and they get interrupted back. And if you space it correctly, you use your light meter to kind of delay them from getting their turn, you can trap them into this kind of combo where they never get a turn, but you constantly are hitting them or doing your action. So you can take control of the action economy.
So it's like you're engaging with the overall idea of the mechanics rather than just one feature of the mechanics.
Yes, you're using multiple things to get ahead, to succeed in the game.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about difficulty in general, right? I think oftentimes what people mistake for difficulty is just pattern recognition, right? So it's in Souls games, I mean, we always talk about it, 0 episodes since a Souls game mentioned, the games became more and more about just parrying and dodge rolling. And that reaches a point where all you're doing is hitting the roll button and instead of thinking of a strategy that defeats that boss. The older Souls games, people described bosses as easier, but every boss had a different approach to them. There was variety.
Yeah.
Now it's well, every boss is the same. It's just at what speed are they swinging their weapon and how many swings in a row, which is Clair Obscur too, actually.
Yeah. Well, The thing about the new Dark Souls bosses is that they're not trying to like engage in what you've learned. They're trying to trick you from what you've already seen, which I don't like.
That would be true. Yeah. I think that, when you talk about, we talked about this a little bit off screen, is it's like difficulty to me is when mechanics, knowledge, and execution meet, right? And if you can go through an entire game without ever learning how a lot of things works and without having to try very hard at execution, then it's an easy game.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like you can go through if you go through a game and like the mechanics are fairly easy, but it requires a lot of learning and like learning to execute, that can be more difficult. But the best difficulty is when all of these things meet, where it's like the mechanics, the knowledge, and your ability to execute those things all ride a certain line of, how would you put it? Like, I don't know what the right word is.
Your ability to succeed.
Yeah, well, it engages you.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I talk about give me God of War mode in the new God of War games, all that actually means is enemies hit harder and enemies have more health. Their mechanics aren't any more complicated. They don't do anything more interesting. It's just like the same exact thing, but I guess you have less room for failure, and it takes a lot more repetition. Now, some would say that that's harder. I consider it to be more tedious.
Yes. It's funnily enough, my next example is from the original God of War. An idea of adding difficulty is if you've gone through the original God of War, you'll know there's different enemies you have to kind of deal with in different ways. One of the first enemies you encounter are these shield enemies. I think you fight them before without the specific combo you're supposed to do, and you find, oh, this is not very easy to deal with. Then, in this area, you go in and it says, this is the Peacock Plume combo. This breaks shields. And then it puts you into a room with a lot of shield guys so that you can learn this combo. And throughout the game, you'll find more and more often you may need to use the specific combo to deal with these enemies. I like that because there's a way to deal with a certain enemy that you have to keep in mind and you have to implement well.
Because I think about this, we talk about Clair Obscur, right? Someone might say, well, I found it quite difficult to learn this mechanic. And I think that the problem is there's like a personal challenge and then there is like the idea of difficulty. Personal challenge comes from sort of like your skill level. So people will call a game easy that a lot of people find hard because that person is so experienced at that type of game or games in general, that the difficulty for the challenge for them to be good, right, is a lot less than someone who is not experienced in those things, right? So to someone who's very inexperienced at a Souls game, Dark Souls 3 is a hard game. Right?
Yeah.
For anyone who is a veteran who has played them since the beginning, Dark Souls 3 is the easiest Souls game, right? Because it's the most forgiving. It has the least consequence for your decisions, right? You have the most iframes from the get-go. Armor isn't important. Wear whatever you'd like. It's mostly for fashion with minor benefits. Weapon choice is minor, So it is the most forgiving game. Therefore, if you're experienced, you're going to have to do very little thinking to get through it. So when we talk about difficulty, at least for me, what I'm referring to is how much effort did I have to put in to achieve something? Real effort, right? And you could say, well, learning the rhythm of a rhythm game is that. Yeah, but like that actually didn't take much. And once I did it, it never came back.
Yeah, that's sort of muscle memory. It's like your ability to execute on something. What I like in difficulty specifically is that I've learned something and then I was able to implement it well. I don't want the game to try to trick me from what I've learned.
Taught me, yeah.
But if I were to like see a thing and I did a thing, I was like, "Oh shit, I'm a gamer god. Amazing." Now it was like whatever.
Yeah.
But the idea is that difficulty feels nice when I'm rewarded for doing the thing I learned well. not for doing the thing I learned 1,000 times, which is why I hate bullet sponge enemies.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. And some might say that those things are identical, right? Well, you're saying you like to execute well, you learn to parry well, so that's good. I'm like, well, yes, but then that was like I did that an hour to 8-10 hours ago, and I'm still doing it.
Yeah, it's monotonous at some point because the difficulty doesn't,
the challenge never increases.
It never changed.
Right.
Every fight is the same, really. The only difference, specifically in Clair Obscur, is maybe the animations. But the actions that you are taking are not specific to what you are fighting.
I think a good example is that the reason I like turn-based RPGs, for example, is I like learning how the characters work and using them with turn order, with different mechanics to overcome a challenge, a difficult boss, understanding how that turn order system works, being able to use haste and slow to shuffle those things around. Some abilities make a person's turn order move upward. Like, that's really fun and engaging. And because every boss is different, you end up using those same mechanics differently. Oh, well, haste is really valuable here and here and here. But then halfway through this fight, the boss hastes itself and you can't slow it. So now you have to go, okay, well, now what do I do?
It's a new challenge. It's something different that you have to deal with. Because a game in its essence is a problem. It is multiple problems that you have to solve.
Why was Portal popular?
Because it was a puzzle game with multiple different it gave you a new problem every time.
It was a new problem every time. Yeah, that's very engaging. And because I think that's true. I think almost every game can be broken down into essentially a series of puzzles, but the puzzles are all using the mechanics of that game. So if it's a Souls game, it's in the context of a Souls game, but each one is kind of its own puzzle.
I think the problem developers have is they don't recognize that. Because instead of thinking this is a new problem my player has to solve, they think this is a new problem, more of it.
Right. Let me just give you more of the same problem. Yeah, I actually think about this when we talk about gimmick fights, and they come up a lot in Souls, but you can think about them in almost anything. A gimmick fight is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But people go, oh, I hate gimmick fights. And I'm like, why do you hate gimmick fights? Oh, they're always the same every time. I say, well, wait, but did you hate it the first time?
It's not a gimmick if it's the same every time.
Well, no, it is. It's what I mean by that is like, so the people who complain, they complain, for example, for Dark Souls 3, like the Vape Lord, right? Giant skeleton who vapes at you, right? That's a gimmick fight. It's not very hard. And the boss after him is also a gimmick fight. It's not very hard. But the first time you do it, it's really good. And I don't think we should be designing our bosses off of the idea that you're going to play this 10-hour game for 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I want there to still be a challenge after 10,000 hours. I don't think that's good. I think that I want to play the game and I want to experience it and think it's good. And if the next time I play it, the Vape Lord isn't hard, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because it was really interesting and scary the first time I engaged with it. It's a giant skeleton crawling at me out of the darkness, and if I don't beat it quick enough, it kills me. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I actually, not to interrupt you, but to give you an example from Clair Obscur, there's a side boss that's just a guy. You have a certain number of turns to beat him or you get crushed. And it's not a hard fight, but all you have to learn is, oh, I need to learn the timing of his little slow-moving purple projectile, because if I parry all of them, that's always going to be enough damage to beat him. That was actually a fun fight because I had to engage with it differently from the way I engaged with the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's a different problem.
Yeah, it was only slightly different, and it did still have to do with parrying, but this was still Act 1 for me. So, or just after Act 1.
Yeah.
So it was just the beginning of Act 2. So for me, it was like still, the parrying was still sort of fresh. I wasn't as good at it, and it was different from every other fight in that, it's the first one I have like a real like hard limit on, like I have to do well to beat it. Yeah. Other people said, oh, that's kind of dumb, it's sort of boring. And I said, no, I found it engaging. I found it way more interesting than all the bosses I one-shot.
Yeah. I have this problem with Persona that anything I fight, I just have to know the element, and then that's just the mechanic. I just pick the character that does wind, lightning, or whatever, and then is like, we all shoot at him.
Right.
Or like we all get in and dogpile on them cartoon style and beat them up.
Right. Yeah. And it's not to, this isn't specifically to attack Claire Obscure, but that was the thing that triggered the conversation, right? And I just think that, I think we're in an era where difficulty has become sort of a weird thing, where I feel like I see a million games that are all clones of each other. It's all like a Souls game adjacent. How do I add Souls mechanics to my RPG? How do I add Souls mechanics to my adventure game? I'm going to tell you, here's a Jedi game. You play as a Jedi. You have bonfires, you have parries, you have, like I've been playing, it's free on Game Pass, so I was playing Jedi Survivor. And I was like, oh man, I forgot that the Fallen Order was just a Souls game.
My problem with it is it feels like they didn't understand what was cool about Dark Souls 1, because
Demon Souls
as well, because the weird thing about Dark Souls is you choose the difficulty. You may not understand how you chose the difficulty, but your loadout, how you interact with the game affects how difficult the game is for you. Let me give you a good example. Do you know the Boar area?
Yes.
The first Boar area you see, there are 2 fires, there's a bunch of enemies, and there's like a bridge with a bunch of enemies. Now, you have something called Alluring Souls, or Alluring Skull.
Alluring Skulls, yeah.
And a bunch of other items. There are a couple ways you can tackle this. You could rush in and try to beat it that way. Or you could lure people out one by one and throw fire bombs at the boar. Or you could throw an Alluring Skull at one of the fires, and then when enemies see the Alluring Skull, they're like, oh, shit. I want that shit. I want that shit now. I have it. It's like, and they all go towards these two bonfires, which like are not placed in anywhere else in Dark Souls. And I feel like that area is such like a roadblock for so many people, but there's so many ways to approach it that people don't think about because they don't look at their items.
No, they don't pay attention to their items. All people do is they go, okay, soul level 1, naked, mallet, electrodes attached to my balls. Every time I get killed, I get electrocuted. There's a guy in my house with a gun screaming at me. Oh yeah, this is a challenge run, baby.
Yeah, challenge runs has, I feel like, ruined Dark Souls. The community is the worst part about Dark Souls, I feel.
Ooh, hot take.
Well, I don't think it's a hot take. Because even Miyazaki... What, is he Miyazaki?
He is a Miyazaki. He is a Miyazaki, yes.
It's like the Miyazaki specifically for Dark Souls was confused when people were being courteous in PvP invasions. Because that's not how he saw it. He didn't see this game as something you dealt with fairly. You were supposed to be as dirty as possible because the enemy placements were not meant to be very nice. You have the ability to have so many tools to deal with all this shit. A friend of mine deals with every Dark Souls the same. He goes to like the bridge or something where a bunch of people die and he farms souls. You can just do that and then level up and like build whatever you need to continue the game. There are a lot of ways to approach it, but people don't look at it that way. They hear Dark Souls is a hard game, so they approach it like it's a difficult game with no solution.
It always reminds me of when people were against like summoning in Souls games, and it's like Demon Souls' literal trailer is a guy facing an impossible odd and then summons appearing to help him. That was the idea of asymmetrical co-op, was like a built-in concept, like you should be getting help, and people are like, no, don't do that, that's for losers, summoning's for losers.
I feel like there's this weird idea of how you should approach a difficult problem, that you have to do it with extreme skill instead of with more knowledge.
Don't use candies in Sekiro. That's losers use Sekiro. It's like, don't use the items in the game, right?
Yeah.
Don't ever do it. Engage with one mechanic. Have one personality. That's what you should do. But that's true, I think, going back to the point about a lot of games. I think we've fallen in game development. I think we've fallen into 2 pits. One pit is everything needs dodge rolling and parrying added to it, and every other game needs PvP added to it. My game will have longevity if the only thing you do is kill other people, and my game will be and the worst part is that to some degree this works. I don't think it's a good thing. You know, people go, well, that's why it's popular because of that. And I go, maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe other things should be encouraged.
Maybe it's popular because it's the only thing that's out there. Have you thought of that? Have you?
Yeah. Well, Kenshi is popular, and Kenshi has none of those things. Right? Kenshi was made by a guy and his sister, and it's broken and like weird, and it's universally loved as a unique experience. Where's another Kenshi? They're working on Kenshi too, but why does no one try to copy Kenshi?
As a sort of aside, PC gaming has always been a nice well of these things, weird games that people can approach, and they all have interesting difficulty like discussions. RTSs are a very good form of this. How do you move a group of people to deal with a problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think that when your excuse is something is popular, right? Like that's why it's good is because it's popular. I go, there's tons of good that's popular. Actually, I was thinking about this about things like music. There are a ton of musicians out there that no one's ever heard of that when you finally find them, you're like, this is amazing. How is this not popular? Popularity doesn't actually equal quality. It just equals right place, right time, series of events that led to success. Actually, you want to know a prime example? Ooh, I'll get a lot of shit for this, but I'm right. The Bee Gees came out before the Beatles. People still listen to the Bee Gees regularly. You've seen them in playlists, you see them in movies. How often do you hear the Beatles? Really? You can probably think of times you've heard it. But how often, when it was not just for a specific set piece, as in something specifically in that era.
Was the Bee Gees Boogie Wonderland?
Staying Alive.
Staying Alive. Oh, yeah. I have.
Staying Alive, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Night Fever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But see, you know those, even if you don't know who the Bee Gees are.
Yeah.
Because they're everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Bee Gees were also very popular. But the point that I'm making is that if you were to just sort of like, without any sort of critical eye, look at these two things, you might think that the Beatles were a bigger, more influential thing than the Bee Gees. And that was true in the era that they existed, that they came out. But the Beatles don't exist anymore, and you hardly ever hear the Beatles. People either really love the Beatles and you hear it because they make you hear it, or it's in a set piece. But it doesn't matter if you're set in the disco era or the far-flung future. People still include Bee Gees songs in their movies, shows, whatever. You can get into a car, and if that person likes disco at all, they're going to have Bee Gees on their playlist. The Bee Gees have lasted. And this is what I mean, right? One of these would probably, in a nutshell, be considered actually bigger than the other. They were both big, but one of them had staying power that the other never really had. So then you ask the question, well, actually, were the Beatles ever actually that good? And you start to analyze it and you go, well, they had better marketing. They were designed to be icons, sex icons, actually, for women. They were marketed for how horny women got for them. And then men wanted to be them because men want to have sex with women.
I think a good example of that is Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's like how many Call of Duty is such a popular franchise, even now when it's been shit for what, a decade?
Yeah.
I don't know how long, but
people still play it.
People still play it. I think it's just because people buy consoles they just can't stop buying consoles for COD. Yeah, there's some people whose only like gaming experience is Call of Duty.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when they hear COD, they stop thinking of Bass Pro Shop. And all they think about is running really fast and shooting the gun, movement slop.
RCXD deployed.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, it's true, though. I think you're right. Something being popular, something selling a lot, is not an indication of quality. Actually, do you remember when The Last Jedi came out, Star Wars, The Last Jedi, that sold like $2 billion in tickets. And I said it's a terrible film. It's just so bad in so many ways. And I had people argue against me. And their argument was, well, it made $2 billion. I said, something making $2 billion doesn't mean it's good. And they're like, well, it's an indicator. I said, it can be an indicator of something, but that's not how you crunch data.
The problem is that's $2 billion spent before anyone knew anything about the movie because they haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, because it was very early in its release. Not many reviews had come out, and reviewers are worthless, right? Yeah. Any famous reviewer is in someone's pocket.
Because here's the thing, Dark Souls was horribly reviewed,
Yeah.
if I remember right.
Demon Souls, Dark Souls, because it was hard, because games journalists don't play video games. But here's the thing. Here's what I said, and I was right. As I said, you watch. If the movies following this one are anything like it, they're going to lose money. Mm-hmm. And I was right. Because Solo was the first Star Wars. They had this whole thing. They had this whole timeline of films they were going to create. And then Solo lost money. It lost money. They didn't make the money back that they spent. And so they canceled a vast number of all of the projects that they were working on. They really trimmed it down because they also realized, oh, we were running off of hype. People forgave The Force Awakens because it wasn't bad, even if it wasn't great. It had a lot of issues. People forgave it because it was our first go. But The Last Jedi was really bad, but we made a bunch of money because people were expecting what people thought was, oh, Force Awakens was sort of like their attempt at a reboot. They're new to it. I can forgive it. I'm sure they'll learn lessons from it and do better. They didn't. They hired Rian Johnson, who should never touch anything except the things he specifically writes, because he doesn't know what he's doing. And then they made a film that was not Star Wars by people who don't like Star Wars. You know, people who don't have a love for Star Wars made Star Wars. It was shit. But because everyone was so ready to assume that the second one was going to have lessons learned from Force Awakens, they went to opening night. But then they were disappointed. They're like, oh, they've learned all the wrong lessons. I'm not doing this again. And so then they failed, and then they hurt for it.
I will say 0 days since shitty rewrites. But I think it is worth bringing it up anytime you can, because it is fucking travesty.
It's no, we're calling it a tragedy. It's a tragic travesty. The tragedy.
It's a travesty.
No, it is.
And it's always made me hate the idea of the things that I have yet to be brought to the big screen being brought to the big screen, because it's going to end up shittily. I know in like one of my favorite pieces of media, there's a person who's non-binary and they're just going to screw that up.
Oh, of course.
They're going to fuck that
No, they're going to fuck it up because they're going to insert their own politics. They're not going to take the media for what it is. They're going to change it. They're going to change it to suit whatever message they think they want to say.
And it's such a shame because they have such an interesting story to tell. But is
this the Persona character?
No, it's not Persona. This is I kept talking to you about the Assassin's Farseer trilogy.
Oh, yes.
I won't go into depth into that because it's kind of out of the scope.
Outside the scope of the discussion. Yeah, no, but I think that when I think that what the point is that the lessons that are getting learned by people are just always the wrong ones, and ego. You know, everyone thinks that they can do things better, that they've got the right of it, and this actually segues well into an issue I've been having lately when dealing with people is. I've been talking in Discord a little bit about this with other people, is that there's this this open source project. We've discussed about it before. I won't go into it. But Beyond stuff. But there's people always want to make changes. You get this code base and people always want to add stuff and make changes. And I've noticed that the people at the top of a lot of stuff, first off, they're not prepared to be at the top, right? They have like an idea of what they want to do and they kind of ignore everything below it. And then there's people contributing below it who need to be reined in, whose motivations are not good. So I'll give you an example. In this game, there are Templars, right? They're defenders of the church in the setting. And this is a multiplayer game. And the Templars and all of the churchgoers have miracles from their respective gods. Yep. This person says, I want to remove the healing spells from all the church rolls. And I want to replace them with other minor stuff. And I want to get miracles removed completely from Templars. Why? And they're like, I just think it's balance. It's combat slop. That's what they say. So then I challenge them. They just ignore me, right? Then finally I say, listen, I'm going to be honest. Based on evidence from every PR that you've commented on, from the way you play the game, how mad you get when you get killed by someone from the church, it is clear to me that you just don't like the church or church rolls and you hate Templars. And in your ideal world, the church would have no Templars. And this is actually just that you want to nerf this stuff, and it is a bad faith attempt to do so. Now, earlier in this person got really mad and then ignored me from then on, right? Even though everyone agreed with me. And they said, well, I'm going to do it anyway, right? They're going to do it. They're going to make the PR and they're going to try to get it implemented anyway. Now, the owner of the server that we play on actually commented he also agreed with me and disagreed with this. Also got ignored. The problem is that while the owner is a good person, him and all the people around him do not have the, I don't want to say balls because it sounds derogatory, but the personality necessary to go, no, cease now.
Yeah. When you are in charge of a multiplayer game, you kind of have to have two modes. One that's responsive to the community and another one that's kind of, no, this is just bad for the community in general.
Yeah. And this is a problem I see that happens in a lot of places. This is a prime example, but this can happen in a lot of places, is that people are not, they don't have the necessary personality or training to manage a project and remove their own feelings to be objective about what's happening. You know, people will argue about like lore. Oh, I think we should make this change because the lore is rewritable, right?
The problem, yeah,
mechanics come first.
Because the problem is this is a multiplayer game, and you've had me play this a few times. The lore kind of doesn't matter when everyone is role playing. The lore needs to fit how the people are reacting to your environment, because that's the lore now. It's like the lore should be what happened in the previous rounds.
Yeah, you need to create something that's going to here's what I always say. With whatever you're trying to achieve, you need to create something that directly influences what you're trying to create, right? So mechanics, lore, rules all need to connect together in a way that creates the culture and the environment that you're looking for. So that same thing is true of a single player game. There's a certain way you want people to engage with this. There's a certain way you want it to be. You need to do things in a way that achieve that. But people get their personal biases mixed up in it. This happens with, and the reason that I thought about this was shows do this. Shows should not be asking the question, do you, the writer, want to leave your own mark on it? I don't care about your mark. I don't care about you, right? This is Halo. It should be about Halo. The people who are going to watch Halo are going to... Halo has a good story on its own. So the people who haven't played the game would like it if they heard the story, because they like science fiction, because it's good science fiction without it being a game. So we don't need to change anything. We want to connect with more audience. Yeah, that's fine. You don't actually need to do anything to connect with them. If they were to just listen to this story, they would enjoy it. So your primary audience is people who already know the story and just want to see it in a new format, verbatim, and people who have no reason to judge no matter what you release. So why change it? Because when you change it, you might get this other group of people who know nothing to begin with. So whatever you do is fine with them. But you're going to lose all of the people who have an expectation.
It's the problem with dealing with fans, because when I'm watching a Halo show, I need to hear the grunts yell around and scream, and then one of them comes at you with 2 sticky bombs. If that's not happening in the show, what the fuck are you doing?
You just created something else.
I need to hear Master Chief say, let's finish the fight.
Let's finish the fight. No, but it's true, right? That you're absolutely right. And that's the point, is that someone who is engaging with the show, if these things are well implemented, they don't know that this isn't correct. So they'll enjoy it. So you don't have to worry about them. But why piss off your base? Why piss off the people who are, it's a vastly popular thing. So you've got a golden goose. Why execute it live?
I think the problem is that depending on what you're dealing with, there are levels of do not touch this shit that people do not recognize. So for like Halo, there's a lot of do not touch this shit because there's the years of lore and years of people who have grown up with Halo who really love the franchise and really love the lore and all the books and stuff that come along with it. So if you deal with that, it's like, this is like the majority of the Halo fan base. This is what makes it popular. You have now destroyed the reason why you're making the Halo series. For Beyond, it's a bit different. you cannot really put your ideas into place because it's not you want to interact with this environment. You want your players to interact with the environment. So you have to kind of fit your narrative to what your players want to do. Now, this is different in a single player game, because in a single player game, you're allowed to be much more selfish. In a new IP, where it's you who's writing it, now it's just you want to create a new experience that's entirely unique to yourself. You can go ham.
And you know what's funny about that? At the beginning of this video, we did some criticizing of Clair Obscur, right? These are the things I find frustrating about it. The funny thing is that I have complete respect for the developers despite my frustrations with the mechanics. The reason is because it was just a group of people who all said, we want to make something, and they sat down and they decided all of the mechanics that they like from other games, and they put them together into a turn-based RPG, and then they said, this is what we created and we like it. And you know what? I respect that.
Yeah, it's like the thing about Clair Obscur, I'm criticizing it because I want them to do it again. I didn't hate that they made this game, but I'd love to see more from them, and I'd love for them to hear this so they can make more stuff.
Yeah, we get like 7 viewers, but I would love if one of those 7 viewers was a developer who heard like why I had a problem, and maybe it got them thinking not as this as like an attack, but rather like, oh, well, I wonder what else we could do.
Because I know you specifically were saying how you like RPGs.
I love RPGs.
But are frustrated with how they're dealt with these days.
Yeah, I miss things being turn-based where you really were just like thinking of your turns. Yeah. I really like sitting there and going, I could do this or I could do this. What's the right move? You know, I like that challenge, that cerebral challenge of making decisions. Actually, the thing I hate is when things are explosive. I much prefer a slow burn because I really want to like think about my moves, right? I don't like when one screw up just kills me, right? Because I'm like, oh, well, I didn't really get to think about that. That just was like.
It would be really cool that even if you did make that mistake, if you play well, you could recover from it.
Yeah, like that's very engaging for me. And there's always room for a variety, but nowadays I feel like a lot of stuff is either slop, indie slop, right? Where it's just like, I just use RPG Maker. It's the same thing for the 10th time.
Yeah.
Or it's like some AAA, I've just made Dark Souls, but they're in a row. You know what I mean? And like, that's kind of how I feel Clair Obscur is at times. There are aspects of it that I think are a really good game. If I'm honest with you, the thing that made me actually be critical of the game isn't the mechanics, despite everything I've said. It's the story. I hate where the story goes.
Oh, that's a shame. Because I saw the beginning of the story because my sister made me play it. I actually liked where it's starting off. Oh,
it's really good. Until you get out of Act 2. Now, some people disagree with me. They're wrong. I lost interest completely. I think it's been long enough, and I don't think you're going to go back to the game. But I just think it's kind of what happens is that you've come to know Gustav, and you know what's about to happen. They've done everything in the world. They've given him a million death flags. It's obvious. His weapons have no skills on them. His abilities are all locked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his abilities are all locked. He constantly says for those who come after. And so at some point they're going to kill him. And not only that, but the second they kill him, they replace him with Tustav. And that's not his real name, but he might as well be because he looks like Gustav, but with slightly more suave hair. He uses all of Gustav's weapons and has all of Gustav's abilities, but now he's also Dante from Devil May Cry.
Well, that's a big problem for me because that's the one character I'm actually really interested in seeing through.
I was really interested in Gustav's story, and once he was gone, I was kind of like, because you want to know what the problem is? Gustav's not the protagonist. And neither is Verso, who is Tustav.
Is it Mael?
It's Mael. And Mael has the least personality in the entire game. Everyone fawns over her because she's pretty, and they insist that her story is good. But if you really pay attention, she has the least personality of any character. She's sort of Frodo from the Lord of the Rings movies.
I always thought of her as like the side character to Gustav, someone Gustav had
investment in.
Yeah, and that's what like is pushing him forward to do the story. But if he's gone, why do I give a shit about the story? I don't care about Mael on her own.
No, I don't either. And then you get into the end of the game, and I won't spoil that in case people still haven't gotten there. But let me just say that everything that makes you like the world and the story becomes mostly irrelevant. And it just becomes interpersonal drama.
I complained about you earlier about how Sexy Brutale does this.
Oh yeah.
Sexy Brutale. I'm going to spoil it because it's gonna make you. It's like what happens at the end. You go through these like sections where you're like saving people in your like large mansion. And, well, I guess that's sort of a spoiler. That's your mansion because you're actually the head of the mansion, someone who keeps following outside. And the reason that this happens is because you're the owner of the mansion. You are insane. And the reason why all of these people... And the reason why you're saving all these people is actually because you caused a house fire to get out on insurance in order for your family to survive. I don't know why you couldn't have sold your mansion or something, but... And at the end it says, it was like, don't worry, it's not your fault. That was the part that pissed me off the most. Because he set a bomb in the fucking clock tower, and they said, it's not your fault?
It's not your fault.
You invited all of these motherfuckers to this party, and they were unlucky enough to get into this house fire that you set up. This wouldn't have happened without you. Do not say it is not your fucking fault. This was entirely... I was so incensed. It ruined the entire playthrough. I was like, I really like this story so far because... And I found out the reason why is because the writer didn't actually write much dialogue. All they did was like reaction to stuff. If they actually wrote something, I think I would have been turned off sooner.
Yeah, you know what? I hate the you're insane shit. I hate it. Michael's laughing. The reason he's laughing is because I used to play a lot of horror games on stream, and 90% of horror games that aren't Resident Evil, the plot is none of it is real and you're just crazy. That's all, or traumatized, right? You either have some sort of disorder or you went through a tragedy and that's made you crazy.
Twists, I feel like, have become the laziest, shittiest writing tool.
I'm not afraid of going... Okay, listen. I'm afraid of one day being insane, but not afraid the way I'm afraid of Mothman, right? Listen, we can make jokes about Mothman, but if a giant Mothman walked out of that door right now, I would shit, okay? Yeah. I would shit so hard, and I would scream, and I would run. But like if you're like, ooh, if a picture that says you're crazy walked out of there, right? Like, ignoring the fact that it's a walking picture, I would just be like, oh, going insane is like, yeah, dementia is scary, but it's scary in the I sure hope I don't have dementia kind of way, not in the that's Mothman and he's coming to kill me.
It could be done well if it's not a fucking twist and you're just insane and you're not sure if the stuff happening around you is real.
I'm sure that already exists, but you're right. It probably would be better if you knew you were crazy from the beginning, and you, the player, from a mechanic standpoint, that could be interesting. Of like, you, the player, are having to differentiate. What if you were a crazy person in an actual monster apocalypse? Yeah, and you had to decide: like in Silent Hill, zombie gonna kill me? Or am I having an episode?
Yeah, because that's actually interesting. Being a twist that everything was just you being crazy is not interesting.
It's not interesting. I remember because it used to be when I streamed Emerald, we used to do this thing where she would come and she would sit next to me once a week, and we would play a horror game together. She liked horror games, but she didn't want to play them. Mm-hmm. But she would like to be next to me while I played them, so we did it on stream because she has great reactions. And we played through Layers of Fear, and we had no clue, right? But you come to find out that nothing is happening. That you are a painter, and the layers are just normal paint, but you're hallucinating everything. You're just a crazy person with mental issues, and everything you've learned along the way is just everyone in your family dealing with the fact that you have mental issues. That's it. It's not real. And it's like, wow, that's not scary at all. That's not scary. That's just sad.
Yeah.
You know, but people do that and they think they're being profound. Well, we're talking about what it's like for crazy people. I said, you don't know what it's like for a crazy person, because if they're crazy, you don't know what they're not going to be able to describe to you
Yeah.
their realistic experience of what it's like.
Yeah.
You're just trying to make a fake, deep expression of what you think it's like to be a crazy person.
I'm tired of the artistic shit like that.
It's abysmal. Just give me Mothman. That's all I'm saying. I want him running at me, screaming, maybe, you know.
Because it only takes a few tweaks to make that an actually interesting story. Your family is denying everything that you see, but everything you see is actually, it's happening to you. You're targeted because you're insane, so it's hard to like actually.
Mothman is actually real.
It's like, yeah.
No, I think that kind of thing pisses me off, and I can understand why you'd be frustrating. Stories being, you know, changed suddenly because we wanted to give a big impact. I think I talked about this in another episode. I said that I think Game of Thrones did some of the worst damage to writing, right? Because movies, TV shows, video games, they all remember the Red Wedding. They all remember Ned Stark's death. So now everyone goes, I gotta kill someone, and then everyone will be more invested. And it's like, well, here's the problem. Game of Thrones has like 8 protagonists, and you follow all of them through their whole journey. So when some of them died, your investment in the plot didn't end with them, but because you still were oh, Ned died, but you're also interested in Jon Snow, and you're interested in Tyrion, and you're interested in Robb Stark died, but Jon's still there, and Tyrion's still there, and Daenerys is still there. We're invested in these people. So even though this plot line ended, and even if that it made you angry, you weren't angry enough to not like these other things. But when you've got one character who's really driving the plot, and they're your motivation, because one of two things can happen. Either the character you kill, I'm kind of like, why am I upset? I understand why everyone else is upset, but like, because you wrote them to be upset. But like, I am not invested in this character. I've only known them for an hour of actual playtime, and you've killed them. Why do I care that they're dead? Or, wait, so I just spent half the game loving this character, and now you've killed them? I don't want to play anymore.
You know what movie does almost the exact opposite of that? Everything All at Once.
Oh yeah, it was an interesting one.
I love that movie for the very sake that from the beginning of the movie, it gives you the intention that something very large is happening. And as you go closer and closer, and as the main character is able to see more and more, you see the actual problem is with just 2 people. And the world is in no danger at all. It is just a conversation between 2 people. And that's...
You know what's... That movie, it's interesting you brought that up, because I'm sort of the odd man on that movie. I didn't dislike it, but I've been trying to figure out for a while why I feel this way. So let me explain to you how I feel, and then I'll explain what my dilemma is. Watching it, I just kind of always felt like this is kind of a little too silly. Like everything just kind of, I was like, I keep struggling to take this seriously. Every time I should, I stop. And I feel like I'm the only person who felt like that, because everyone really, really liked that film. But every time I was going through it, I would be like, this feels a little too silly. This moment feels a little too silly. What are they going for here? Was I supposed to laugh, or was I supposed to take it serious? I can't tell if I'm watching a comedy or not. It's very both high and low budget at the same time. The vibe is off. And I didn't dislike it. I came out of it going, yeah, it was a good time. But everyone else was gushing, and I couldn't shake this feeling, and I've wondered what that is. Now, I was a film and acting student, so maybe I just have a little bit too much understanding of behind the curtain, or maybe I missed something. I don't know. That's not like a humble brag. Because I do know that sometimes that affects me. Sometimes I know what is happening well enough that I am like pulled back by it.
Yeah.
Right. And I can identify that. But with that film, I kept going, what is it that's making the vibe weird for me that everyone else is not experiencing?
That's interesting, because the film kind of goes along the line of absurdism.
Yes.
There's insane things happening all the time, and that's because the singular note of the film is kind of, regardless of everything was everywhere, everything all at once happening, none of it really matters except what you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it, in a way, the insanity is kind of to come back to one point, is that it's a relationship between a mother and her daughter.
And her daughter. Yeah, I understand. I don't know. It was just something to do with the presentation, and sometimes films do this for me. I actually think a lot of the stuff that it's that actor, the guy. I forgot his name. He was Short Round in Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff he's in, there's a level of, I don't want to say low budget because that sounds derogatory, but there's just like a less
quirkiness.
Yeah, that sometimes works, but sometimes makes me kind of go, it's kind of like watching Shaun of the Dead and anything from those guys. You know what I mean? There's a level of like, this was kind of made on a budget that you can feel in a way that you're just kind of like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But other people love it. It's not identical, but I was just trying to think of something I could sort of relate it to.
I could definitely see that in that movie specifically.
In a box. It's kind of in a box. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know how to describe the vibe, but I left it not quite getting what everyone else got out of it. Not to derail you from your point. I get what your point is, but it was just interesting that you brought up that film, because that was one of the few examples I have of, I must be missing something everyone else is getting.
I achieved what I wanted from that film, because what I want from almost any story is I want a character story. I only care about the characters. I don't if the world is ending, I need a reason to why I care about the world ending. If I don't give a shit about any of the characters in that ending world, why do I care about the world ending? Because the world is ending. What does that even mean? That could mean a number of different things. Do you mean that the Earth is actually going to explode? Do you mean that civilization will fall? Or what do you mean the world will end? And how does it affect anyone I actually care about in this setting?
I see what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. I think that for me, I mean, it always depends. As time has gone on, I think I've sort of fallen out of love with drama. It's kind of like romance. I don't want it anymore. I got 2 hours to watch a film. I don't need 30 minutes of it to be on romance. I feel like for me, what I'm really interested is interesting places, worlds, and ideas. So I really like sci-fi because I really like new places and adventures and technology. So I really hate interpersonal drama nowadays. Like when I'm watching something and it's science fiction and then two characters get mad at each other because of a misunderstanding or because of like interpersonal drama, I'm like, ooh, wow, when does this end? Because I'd like to get back to the spaceships.
Yeah, I am tired of misunderstandings. I feel like it's ground that's completely, there's no dirt there anymore.
Yeah, we've dug that so deep. Like that horse, we're not even beating a dead horse. It's just kind of a mush pile at this point.
I see the Earth's core from where it's like.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's a very boring retread. And I feel that way about a lot of things. Like I'm not really invested in love stories. It's just taking away from my limited time frame. What I want is like the things that are really cool. Actually, I remember I talked about this. So you remember, not to talk about Star Wars again, but this is a good example. Remember Rogue One, that movie?
I didn't watch it.
Yeah, but you know the movie.
Yeah, I know the movie.
Yeah. So Red Letter Media did what they did and like shit on it, right? And they're like, oh, all it is a fan service movie. And I remember going, I kind of wish that was all of them. I wish that Disney hadn't even tried to tell a story and had just made fan service movies, because seeing ATSTs and seeing TIE fighters and seeing spaceships shoot at each other, like that was more fun. I don't really care. I already know what the plot of Star Wars is, right? I already know that the Imperials want to do bad and the Rebels don't want the bad.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But you know what's cool? Laser beams and spaceships and stuff like that. And that's quite entertaining, right? And so, like, why does everyone like The Empire Strikes Back more than A New Hope? Because even though A New Hope tells the story that leads to it, The Empire Strikes Back has a lot more action. And it's sci-fi action, unique sci-fi. Star Wars has a very unique sci-fi feel that isn't the same as all the hard sci-fi everyone's been trying to create since then.
Yeah, it's very inspired by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I've mentioned it's like, what was it? It was that movie that Disney acquired before Star Wars to try to overthrow Star Wars. Fuck. God damn it.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Absolutely. Good. Yes. No, but I get what you're saying. I mean, did you remember it? But like,
I remember this story. Okay. So what happens in it is a man comes to like Mars.
A man comes
to Mars, and he kind of has to.
Was it John Carter?
Yes, John Carter of Mars.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. John Carter of Mars. This is the same guy who wrote Tarzan. John Carter of Mars is about a man who comes to a new world, is fish out of water story, and he has to kind of help guide a revolution to end an empire. It's a very similar story that Disney fucked up like they do everything else.
They don't have skill anymore. I think that my point that I was making really is that like I'm at a point where every other form of media is so overdone. It's every TV show, it's every book, it's every video game that like if you just are like, hey, like here's just some cool fan service, I'm gonna be like, oh man, I can totally just popcorn this for 2 hours. Like I don't even need all this deeper shit, right? Like my main character's motivation, I want to cut off the bad guy's head, is like all the motivation I need. Give me John Wick. Why is John Wick great?
Because he always wins. He always does cool shit and he shoots.
He's cool. He wins, and his motivation is absolutely impossible to disagree with. A bunch of bad people stole his car and killed his dog.
Yeah.
Is anyone good being harmed in this film? No, only the bad guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so the enemies are irredeemable, so we don't care if they die. All right, and his motivation is they killed my dog that my dead wife gave me. Yeah, I'd be wanting to kill people over that too. Then he does it. So what it's satisfying. Nobody good gets hurt, only the bad guys. So they all have it coming even if they hadn't shot his dog. Yeah. And it's fun to see him do it.
You know, I'm very jealous of that. I wish
someone shot my dog that my dead wife gave me.
I wish I could enjoy fan service like a lot of other people can, but I'm not a fan in the same way other people are. I'm not a fan of Star Trek and like would love to meet the actors or stuff like
I'm not either. But if you just show me one of the episodes of Star Trek where they get into a cool space battle, I'm not complaining. Those are pretty cool episodes.
Yeah, but the problem is that's not what I'm looking for. And I agree that that's very cool, but I have a hard time fitting into fandoms because I want a very specific thing, which is that character story in between each other. Even if you give me...
But let's do this in reverse. See, because let's say there was a series that was all about space battles, and then people also liked some of the character stories. And then someone said, I want to tell a story that focuses on the character stories of the people in this universe, right? And you really liked that. And then Red Letter Media said, where's the ATSTs? I don't care that she misses her dad, right? But you said, well, I think sometimes it would be nice if people just talk about the character. This is my point. My point is you can exchange it.
Oh, no, I'm not kind of like arguing with you. My point is that I'm jealous that people can enjoy that. I think it's a good thing to have these things. I just wish I could enjoy it the same way other people could.
I think you can, but it's a different thing that you're interested in. When I say fan service, what I mean is that I don't think fan service is a derogatory term used to describe there's something people really like and they get excited for, and you have focused on that thing, and then that is used derogatory. But I think fan service is a good thing. Whatever it is that your core fan base gets excited for should probably be in the media that you're creating. You should, if you create a fighting game and everybody plays the game for it to be a fighting game, and then half of the game is just characters talking about that time someone like dumped them.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. Arc System, this is an aside. Arc System Works recently had like a direct, like Nintendo has. Everyone was really excited for it. A lot of fighting game fans were like, we're really excited to see what Daisuke has done. They called him Taisuke because they've messed up their own developer's name. Daisuke is known as like a legendary fighting game creator. He's gonna be shown at the end. This is gonna be really cool. And you know what happened? they showed no fighting games at all. This legendary, well-known fighting game company was like, everyone had like in every different time zone was so excited. They were up at like 2 a.m. in different regions. It's like, we're gonna watch this, and like Daisuke is gonna like show us like the next Guilty Gear,
right?
And then nothing.
That's my exact point. Whatever it is that people are the core thing that people like about the thing you're making should probably be in the thing you're making. That is what matters. That is the core. The soul of your thing is the thing everyone is really excited for.
Yeah. And my favorite joke to make about that is something you might not get is they really are a legendary fighting game company. I did not block that mix.
I mean, it's true.
It's like,
but yeah. So I mean, I think my core statement here is what makes something good. I think people miss out on that nowadays. I don't think people. I think we've done everything is a derivative of something else. And actually, to sort of wrap it up, if we go back to Kenshi, why is Kenshi so popular despite being so niche and weird? Why has it sold millions of copies?
Because people love that shit.
But why? Why do they love that shit? It's unique. There's nothing. If you ask what's a Kenshi like, people will be like, there isn't one. There's nothing else like Kenshi. Why is that? And I've talked about this in an episode before. I'll answer my own question. The reason is because Kenshi is a unique experience that people can really get into the nitty-gritty of it and just create their own story in a system that nothing else like it exists. It's not derivative of anything else. The world is unique. The races in it, besides humans, are all completely unique and made up for the setting. Sure, robot people and like hive mind bug people are not completely original, but like nothing like hivers actually exists in any other setting. The skeletons and those are the robots. They're called skeletons. They're robots. Their origins are also very like unique to that setting, and the way that they're still kind of people, but also not, because they're immortal, and the way they engage with the world as immortals, like, I kind of should probably wipe my data bank before I go crazy. I'm building up too much information from being alive 100 years. That all is very unique. And so it works even when it's weird and kind of broken, because you've made something that you will not find anywhere else. Versus everything else that I feel like I've played it before, even when it's completely new. Yeah, I've watched that movie, I've played that game, I've read that book.
It's funny. When I first played Kenshi, it was kind of reminiscent of the original Fallout. The original.
Yeah, I can see that.
When I first played Fallout, it really reminded me of that experience getting into it. It had a very similar feel. It's a lot nicer in a lot of ways. It's much easier to get running, for one. But the idea of endless possibilities was very cool. I do think Bethesda did a weird thing with Fallout 3 that, while a lot of people liked it, they also kind of removed part of that idea of how it worked.
You see it in Stalker games. Nobody's actually really that invested in the main story of Stalker. 90% of Stalker mods are about just giving you more free-form, open-ended, tell-your-own-story gameplay. No one is really... The main story is just barriers to further progression of your own plot. You don't really care about the main story. People tell endless stories of going off on a side mission and shooting some bandits and dealing with some dogs and then a bloodsucker, and then you're dead, and such is life in the zone. Nobody really tells a deep, intricate story about Strelok's brain damage. Nobody talks about that. You don't go on a message board and have people talking about Stalker and they're in a deep conversation about how scorched your brain is. They talk about all that peripheral freedom to sort of tell your own story.
Why is Minecraft so popular?
Exactly. It's open-ended. There's no goal.
And this Minecraft was so popular before there was even like they added something.
Minecraft was popular when it was a flat plane. You gave Notch $2 and you could be on a flat plane. There were pigs.
Yeah, I mean, like, the pigs are nice.
Yeah, the pigs are nice. But you get my point.
Yeah.
So I think that I hope what people will start doing is thinking less about, I like this mechanic and I want to just copy that, and start thinking of like, what is something I can do that is I think vibes, capturing vibes is the most important. Whatever you make, find an experience or a vibe that you really like and try to create that rather than just create mechanics.
I want people to stop mashing two different game genres together.
Yeah, buttholes meets beans.
Let's stop doing that, because it's not cool when it's done the 10 millionth time.
Yeah, the Need for Speed like of Dark Souls.
the car does a barrel roll to dodge an attack.
Dude, it's like Silent Hill meets Minecraft.
It's like,
it's kind of like the My Little Pony of Dark Souls. Yeah, like I don't. Yeah, the roguelike of dating sim. Finally. I can't wait. Now with parrying. Parry their attempts to flirt with you for increased damage.
It's sad that the last real Bejeweled game is a porn game.
It is sad. Well, I've really covered everything I wanted to say. Did you feel like we covered everything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think it was quite a difficult conversation to have. I'm glad that we've gone through it.
Yeah, it was quite the sight.
Yeah.
Now that I'm on Monodrex, I've never been so agreeable.
You no longer a flower in a sandstorm.
What was it? It's not
a rose in a
No. It's I've never been so involuntarily. Now that I'm on Monodrex, I've never been so involuntarily agreeable. Anyway, if you made it to the end, leave us a comment. Let us know that you made it here. I might even say your name, Zipper, Bottle. That one guy whose name I don't remember. Thank you.
You didn't say his name. All right.
Yeah, I didn't remember it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.